What is going on, guys? It is Foxydude here. Welcome back to a brand new video for you guys today here on the channel. Today, Formula 1 is over. We are in the winter break and the year is also coming to an end. So what I thought I'd go ahead and do is whack up a tier list and go through every single race of this season and basically rank it and see where it is. At the middle of the season, I did a top 5 races of the season so far video, which went around quite well. These videos tend to do quite well anyway. I was going to do the same thing again, but I wanted to sort of discuss every single race. So I'm actually going to go through them all. So if you haven't enjoyed the video, drop it a like, subscribe if you're new around here as well. And yeah, let's go straight into the tier list. So what I've done is I've ranked it. So the top category, the best race of the season, only one is going to be able to go in here. It's the best race of the season. Then I've got a great race, which you'll see quite a lot of. Decent race, so it was just literally mid-tier. It wasn't a great race, or get this track off the calendar, which is, you know, going to be some of them. So let's get straight into it then. So starting things off with Abu Dhabi. Unfortunately, this race was a get the track off the calendar type of race. It was just awful. However, this is only for pure hatred. So if you hate Abu Dhabi, it goes into here. I don't hate Abu Dhabi. The race was just bad. It was just really, really poor. Red Bull were way faster than anybody else on track. I think they got a 1-2 in the end. No, they didn't. Charles Leclerc managed to hold off Perez, didn't he? Ferrari were, you know, sort of quick-ish. Mercedes were nowhere near, and then everyone else was just further back. It was just a snooze fest, really. Let's be straight on honest here. So there's nothing else really to say about Abu Dhabi. Australia, this was, I would probably say, a decent race. I think what we saw was quite a lot of good overtaking. We saw some safety car drama. We saw Leclerc and Verstappen going at it, which was the only time they did. There was the battles between Russell and Perez, and also Hamilton and Perez. And the McLaren's also getting involved in the act. So it was decent. It wasn't amazing. I mean, obviously Leclerc was just dominating the whole time. Funny that when Ferrari dominated the whole time. It was interesting. A long time ago. But yeah, it was a decent race. There's nothing really more to sort of go on about it. It was just sort of that. Austria. Nah, this was a. I don't know whether I don't think it's worthy of going into being a great race, but it's an upper decent race. I mean, obviously we saw Leclerc mug off Verstappen 3 times, which was nice to see because I don't like Max. Then we also saw there was a lot of overtaking around. There was also the engine failure for Carlos Sainz, the dramatic one as well. But I don't class it as a great race, but it was definitely a decent race, mostly because of my unsatisfactory bias towards not liking Red Bull. But taking that aside, yeah, there was some good overtaking, a couple of battles for the lead, which is what we wanted to see. I think what would have made it a great race is if the battle for the lead between Leclerc and Verstappen was more equal. It probably would have been better. And what I mean by that is that the first overtake was probably, you know, the legitimate setting the tone. You weren't quite sure if that overtake was the one that just caught out Red Bull or whether they could do something. But then the next 2 overtakes, it was very easy for Leclerc to just cruise up to Max and pass. So it didn't quite feel that dramatic. I know at the end he was complaining about a throttle issue, I think it was, but he had it covered anyway. So I can't really put more than that. Next, we've got Bahrain. This was a great race. This was a really, really good race. A proper season opener. Leclerc winning it with Verstappen. I was about to say Verstappen in P2, but no, both Red Bulls DNF from that race, and I jumped out of my seat because Mercedes got a podium. Oh, I remember this race. It was a great race, though. We saw Leclerc versus Verstappen for the first time. What we thought was going to set up for an epic season-long duel between the two of them. There was plenty of overtaking everywhere else. Bahrain is just a beautiful track. It just does what it needs to do. It just gives you great racing. Yeah, I couldn't fault it. It was a great race. Lots of drama, and one that I will remember. Now, Azerbaijan. This is a bit of a strange one. It's in between not a great race and a decent race. Now, there was a couple of, I think, I'm going to put it in lower decent. Now, why I'm going to put it there is because there was a bit more dramatic effect behind it. We had, obviously, the start of the race when Perez jumped Leclerc, so that was a little bit fascinating. We then saw Sainz DNF from the Grand Prix, which was quite dramatic. Then we saw Leclerc come in for an early stop, and then we were actually set up for a very good race of Charles Leclerc versus the Red Bulls. Then Leclerc's engine failed, which, again, it led to dramatic consequences of the engine failure. And then, obviously, Verstappen passed Perez. And from that point onwards, it really didn't transpire into anything. There was some good racing, as there normally is in Azerbaijan. I remember Hamilton making his way through the field. There was a lot of battling, especially the Alpines. They were a pain in the backside. Vettel trying to make a move. I think it was on Yuki Tsunoda before he went wide and had to go down the escape road. And eventually actually got a very strong race in that one. Vettel's the GOAT at Azerbaijan. Can we just put that out there? Like, he is the man for Azerbaijan, just straight up. So yeah, I thought it was a decent race, that one. It could have been a great race had Leclerc still been in it, but Ferrari let themselves down. Belgium, that was easy. It's not a great race. The problem with Belgium, and it's a dig at Belgium, but it's not at the same time, is that Belgium is always so heavily hyped. Rightfully so, because it's such a fantastic circuit. But the problem is, when it gets to the round to the race, you're either going to have it as a brilliant race, one of the best of the season, or you're going to have a crap one. There's no in-between on it. And we saw, Verstappen had a grid penalty, but that Red Bull was way too much for anybody else to even conjure. And in the end, Verstappen won it I think it was like 30 seconds clear or something of Perez in the end. It was an easy 1-2 for Red Bull. There was the crash at the start between Hamilton and Alonso, which was, again, a little bit dramatic. But apart from that, I genuinely don't really remember anything much from that. So yeah, it wasn't spectacular. Now, Brazil, best race of the season for me. Now there's a reason for this. Yes, I'm actually going to stop the comments from putting it in there before I do. Yes, I'm going to be straight up 100% honest. There is part biased into this because Mercedes got a 1-2 finish, and I'm a Mercedes fan. So I'm going to put that out there. More than happy to put biased in there. But the thing is this was a tricky one between, we'll get to it, Brazil and Silverstone. Now, I might change my mind as I go on throughout all this, but what gave Brazil the upper hand for me is that the entire race weekend was sensational. And I think that's what tipped it over Silverstone. Maybe when I get to explaining Silverstone, I'll change things around a bit. But we saw a qualifying which was highly dramatic and just mental, and saw Kevin Magnussen getting pole position in the wet/dry, which was just genuinely insane. The one qualifying session for the entirety of the season I didn't watch, and I missed that one. But we had an absolutely insane qualifying session. We had an incredible sprint race, which saw a great duel between Russell and Verstappen. Sainz and Verstappen making some contact as well. So there was a great sprint race in there as well. And then the race itself was also brilliant, with Russell out front controlling it. The contact between Hamilton and Verstappen and the contact between Norris and also Charles Leclerc. Then we saw the drama of the safety car sort of later on in the race. Hamilton was making his way through the field as well during the Grand Prix. Then there was the drama of the safety car. You had Russell v Hamilton up front. You had Perez defending from the Ferraris. You had Alonso making his moves. You had the team orders between Red Bull, and then the drama of the team orders after the race. And Russell's first win of the season, and it was 1-2, obviously. There was something about Brazil which just, for me, made it was the best weekend of the whole calendar, but by far. So I'm putting Brazil as the best race of the season, but maybe when I explain Silverstone, I'll change my mind. Next is going to be Canada. Now, this wasn't really a great race. I didn't really have much to sort of bone about with this one. It was, again, it was a decent duel between Verstappen and Carlos Sainz. I know Sainz tried a different strategy to Verstappen to try and make the move stick, and he got close. He was really close on a bunch of occasions. He was in the DRS zone in the final few laps, but it's one of those where it was just blue balls moment, where he was so close yet so far, and unfortunately it kind of led to a bit of a stale finish, unfortunately, which was not the greatest thing in the world. So unfortunately it wasn't a great race. Kota. Now, this is a bit of an interesting one. I'm tempted to put it into a great race, but I'm not sure whether I put it in decent or not. No, I back it. I back it was a great race. I actually really enjoyed this one, as much as it hurt me a bit at the end. It was good though. I mean, we started with the collision at the first corner between Russell and Sainz, which was dramatic because Russell and Hamilton were going for it into turn one, which was again, a bit of a crazy start to things. Then we had Verstappen Hamilton reunitedness, should we say. We had the massive crash as well between Alonso and Stroll at the end of the first safety car, I think it was. And then we had Verstappen with his slow pit stop. We had a great duel between Max and Charles to eventually get P2 at that point. And then obviously we had Max trying to hunt down Lewis. I thought Lewis had enough in it, but then eventually Max started to just claw back even more. The Red Bull was incredibly quick again, as it was all season really, and he made the overtake and won. So I thought it was a great race actually. I really enjoyed that one. Speaking of it, now the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. This is an interesting one because I blame the stewards a lot for this one, and it's between not a great race and a decent race. And the reason that I blame the stewards is because they didn't enable DRS quick enough. We had so many laps where it was just no one could overtake. It was really hard to anyway, but they just took ages to enable DRS, and it just sort of really staled out the Grand Prix. Also, we had the issue with Charles Leclerc when he spun and put it in the wall. That was probably the only really dramatic thing. Max had it covered out front. Yeah, it wasn't... No, I'm going to say not a great race. It didn't really lift my expectations for Imola heading into this season. It hasn't actually really produced... 2021 in fairness was actually a really dramatic race, so I take it back on that front. France. This was actually... Believe it or not, I thought this was a great race. I really enjoyed this one. Again, we had the start of the Grand Prix, the duel between Leclerc and Verstappen. Max got really close in the very early stages. Then all of a sudden, Leclerc started to pull away, and you thought, does Ferrari have an edge here? Max came in early to try and force Ferrari's hand. Leclerc pushed too hard, made a mistake, crashed out of the Grand Prix. So that definitely deaded off, again, the battle for the lead, which just allowed Max and Hamilton to do their own thing. But then we had a great fight between Sainz and Russell, especially between Sainz and Perez. Then all of a sudden, Sainz is called into the pits midway through fighting Perez. Russell and Perez was also a great one, and great instincts from Russell off the virtual safety car to get through. So it was a really, really good race. It was just lacking the spark out front. And otherwise, it probably could have been up there as one of the best races of the season. But yeah, well, I'm gonna put France in the great race category, and that's the same with Hungary. That was also a really good race. Again, I think this was probably the first time throughout the season that we had different teams, the top three teams, scrapping with each other, but in different battles. Like we had the start of the race was a straight fight between Russell and Charles Leclerc, in which Leclerc pulled off a stunning overtake. I think it was around the outside on like lap 30 or something to get the move done and take the lead. And it looked like Leclerc was going to go ahead and win it until Ferrari, became Ferrari again, basically. But we saw the likes of Leclerc versus Russell. Then we saw Verstappen versus Leclerc. Then we saw Russell trying to go at Verstappen when Max spun and then eventually passed Perez instead. And then we see Hamilton just coming through the field on his soft tyres, who was absolutely rapid. And that was the point where we had all the teams going at each other, and obviously Verstappen with a great win there. And yeah, I really enjoyed the race. I thought it was awesome. Next, we're going to go to Japan, and this was... It's not worthy of obviously get the track off the calendar because Japan or Suzuka is a phenomenal circuit, but it was by far one of the worst races of the year. And it was literally because, A, we had the wet weather and the red flag. Obviously, safety is a priority. You know, they started the race on time. Sainz aquaplane, though, and spun out and crashed. Hamilton, I think, who hit the advertising? It was Gasly, I think, hit the advertising board. Could be wrong. I think Hamilton just missed that board as well. And Alonso was in the background. But then as soon as the race got going, I mean, Verstappen was clear. Leclerc had immense tyre wear and was forced into a late mistake by Sergio Perez. And then from that point onwards, nothing really actually happened. I didn't realise I could pause that stupid ad at the top there. Nothing really happened. And no one could really pass. Although I think that the closest battle on track was between like Hamilton and Ocon, and then Perez and Leclerc. But even then, nobody could pass anyone. Apart from Russell, actually. Russell knew how to overtake around there. But it really didn't just give me any high hopes, really, for many future races. So, yeah, shame that one, but it is what it is. Next up, we've got the Mexican Grand Prix. Get this track off the calendar. It's crap. It wasn't a great race. It was boring. But the problem with Mexico is it's never been good. It really hasn't. I mean, Mexico City is a Red Bull happy hunting ground. It always has been. Obviously, Verstappen winning the Grand Prix quite easily, actually. Mercedes were in the hunt, but they chose the wrong tyre chassis, so that screwed them over. There was a good tyre chassis further back, though, obviously, with Ricciardo in particular getting a 10-second penalty, but working his way to actually not even kill his position that he eventually got to. But there's just nothing about Mexico since it's been brought back on the calendar in 2014, I think. Unless it was 2015. Well, it was definitely on one of those two. It just hasn't provided a good race. I don't remember a good one. I think it's time for it to go. Miami, it was nice knowing you for one race, and I don't want to know you again, unless you could provide something better. It's a bit harsh to say Miami, get this track off the calendar. Because it was its first race ever, I'm gonna put it there. Let me get straight into it. The track is good. I actually quite like the track layout. There's one section of the track which is the little chicane point, which just needs to be binned. And they've even been open, the Miami GP organisers, to removing it. It's just not necessary. Just allow it to just be a clean run towards that straight, and maybe you might get something out there. I get that you might want to put some more corners into the track, but you've got enough in the first sector. You've got a high-speed, tight and twisty sector one anyway. You've got a nice long straight for plenty of overtaking. I like the way that the corner at the end of the straight works, how it flings into a hairpin and then swings right around. That's nice because it allows you to maybe go for the move on the inside, but then you have to you've got multiple corners to either continue your attack or try and rework your defense. So that's good, but it's that stupid chicane complex which is just so unnecessary. It just doesn't need to be there. It kills the track. And again, then you've got a very nice long straight, plenty more overtaking with another good hairpin. And I really like the way that the track finishes off. I really do like the as I need to clear the throat there. I really like the way that circuits, when they go into a hairpin and then you've sort of got this little bit here, when they've got the bit that sort of flicks right and left, but it's high speed and doesn't make you have to change gears onto a final straight. It reminded me of the Korean Grand Prix, that sort of final complex, which, by the way, Korean Grand Prix unmatched. That track is banging, but that's taking things out of proportion. It was great. So I back Miami. Monaco. Now you're probably wanting me to get this off the calendar, and genuinely, in normal circumstances, yes, I would. But it was actually a decent Monaco Grand Prix, all things considered. Starting in the full wet, again we had the problem of waiting ages for the race to actually start, but there was a lot more that I now reflect on, as I'm pointing to my cheek, not my head, that allowed me to put a different perspective on Monaco for just this race only, obviously, with the wet tyres. Some decided to try and stay out on the wets and go straight to dries, like in 2016. Some went from wets to inters to dries. We saw the Ferrari strategy conundrum. We saw the close battle between the two Red Bulls and the two Ferraris at the end of the race. We saw some decent overtaking all round. It was quite decent for Monaco, and I'll give it the benefit of the doubt on this one. Next, Monza. Right. What I want to do with Monza, it wasn't really that great. I think Carlos Sainz basically was the standout show of Monza. He obviously had a grid penalty, but he came through and put in a brilliant performance for Ferrari at their home turf. Ferrari were just no match for Red Bull. Red Bull had way too much straight line speed anyway. Red Bull were then able to go with a slightly higher downforce rear wing than anybody else on the grid. They still were able to keep their top end speed, but it meant that they had way more performance in the corners, and it really helped them out. Ferrari didn't have that. No one was a match for Verstappen on the day, and nothing really happened at the front of the field. But like I said, Carlos Sainz with a bit of a bravo for doing extremely good comeback. Same with Perez, and also the same with Hamilton, because those three all started right down the back. There was that nice double overtake as well from Lewis on the exit of the chicane to take on Gasly and Norris. The Dutch Grand Prix. This was a decent race. It would have been a great race had things played out the way that they played out. We were on course to see Hamilton and Russell have to defend from Verstappen on softer tire, on newer rubber at the end of the race. So Mercedes went gambling again, which they're more entitled to. And they went for the one-stop strategy, going from the mediums to the hards. They were actually quite quick on those hard tyres. Verstappen was out front, but eventually he'd have to do about probably another 10, maybe 15 laps before he had to come in and go on to another set of the mediums. Then the chase would have been on. Can he get onto the back of Russell? Can he pass Russell? Then can he pass Lewis? Overall, I think Verstappen probably would have won anyway, because the Red Bull, like I said, is just so quick in a straight line. But I felt like it would have been great. But unfortunately, we had Tsunoda stop, then carry on. Then he pitted, then he carried on for about 2 more corners, and then stopped VSC, and then Verstappen was ahead at that point. Or it came VSC and Verstappen was ahead, so it just sort of killed the race off from there. Obviously, there was a safety car, so Mercedes did a bit of a split on that. But yeah, Hamilton, I think it was confirmed that he was in the wrong power mode, which is why he got breezed past anyway, but he would never have been able to have held off Verstappen anyway. So yeah, unfortunately, it is what it is. Saudi Arabia, great race. Great race. Saudi Arabia gets so much criticism, and rightfully so, for their politics side of things, with the human rights issue and all that stuff. But can we just take that away from it and just go to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix as just a Formula 1 event? Nothing to do with politics. Take that out of it. Saudi Arabia now has had 2 races, and both of them have been absolute classics. The track is brilliant. I think the track is absolutely phenomenal. There were rumours that they were going to ditch this circuit and go somewhere else. Please don't. This track is awesome. It's one of my favourite tracks on the calendar. It's amazing. It's providing fantastic racing. It's high speed. We saw last year chaos throughout the entirety of the track, throughout the entirety of the race. Loads of VSCs, loads of crashes, loads of all this. A lot of people are complaining that it's too dangerous. I'm sorry, but that's what Formula 1 is. It doesn't matter if you go to Monaco or if you go to Paul Ricard, which is obviously not on the calendar anymore. You know, it doesn't matter. Formula 1, you're always going to put your life on the line. You look at Bahrain in 2020, you know, everything about Bahrain looks like a nice, safe and comfortable circuit. But then all of a sudden, Grosjean has a crash in one area of the track that no one expects you to crash at, and all of a sudden he's bursting into flames for 20 seconds before he finds his way out. It's just the way that Formula 1 is. And the way, for example, Mick Schumacher's crash happened in qualifying, that's what happens when a high-speed circuit bites you. You know, otherwise, we might as well just go to a Monaco every single time if you're too afraid of a high-speed crash. It is what it is. They did a great job of making the track safer from 2022, you know, making some changes. They've made more changes heading into the race this year, so fine. And we had an epic duel between Leclerc and Verstappen again. Lots of overtaking. Ocon and Alonso had some great duels. Put some respect on Saudi Arabia, because it deserves it, genuinely. Silverstone. Now, this is the one where I really want to put it up at best race of the season, alongside Brazil. But I don't think I can turn my back and say that there's 2 best races of the season. This is really annoying now. This is really annoying. Do you know what? I'm going to break my own rules. I can't. If you told me to pick, I just couldn't. I couldn't pick between Silverstone and Brazil. It was an incredible race. Obviously, we had the scary crash to start with Guan Yu Zhou. Thank God he was okay. And then, yeah, we had obviously the attack. The Sainz then managed to nail the second start. Verstappen then got past Sainz, who made a mistake. Then Verstappen had what he thought was a puncture, but he actually had some bit bodywork stuck in the rear of his car, so he lost loads of downforce, so he was out of the equation. All of a sudden, then you're thinking, wow, Ferrari, they've just been gifted a golden opportunity. Well, no, because in came Lewis Hamilton to basically put the pressure on Ferrari the whole race long. And again, it was one of those races of, had it played out the way it played out without Ocon's DNF, Hamilton probably would have won the British Grand Prix. But unfortunately, it didn't. Ocon retired, but also that was a saving grace, because then we saw a fantastic duel between Sainz and Leclerc to get ahead. And then the duel between Leclerc, Perez, Hamilton, Alonso, Norris, yes. And David Cross through goes Hamilton is by far one of the greatest lines he's ever mentioned and will go down in history alongside, but here comes Sebastian Vettel. Awesome race. I can't pick between Brazil and Silverstone. I couldn't. They were both incredible. If I had to say what was the best race weekend, it was Brazil. Even though qualifying actually for Silverstone was dramatic in the wet. But, you know, if I'm going to say best race, both of them were just as good as each other. Maybe Silverstone may have I don't know. I can't. I'd be here for days. Singapore. This was actually a great race. This was a really good race, this one. Perez got a really good start, jumped Charles Leclerc and was leading the way. I think he was leading the way after the start. I'm pretty sure he did. I think he led every lap. But then Leclerc was pressuring Perez. Sainz was dropping off. Hamilton had great pace but couldn't keep up after he got run wide on the first corner. And then, you know, was quicker than Sainz but couldn't find a way through. We saw Verstappen trying to make his way through the field. We saw Max making a big mistake, locking up and losing loads of time, and he had to make an extra pit stop. We saw Russell having a horror show of a weekend. We saw Hamilton locking up into Raffles Boulevard and crashing. It was a pretty dramatic Grand Prix, and there was some good overtaking, good battles in there as well. And yeah, overall, Singapore was actually really decent. It was a great race, I actually thought. And then that last leaves us with Spain, which was also a great race in my personal opinion. I really enjoyed this one. Again, it was going to be quite poor. I mean, we had obviously the contact between Hamilton and Magnussen at the start. We saw Hamilton having a fantastic recovery at the race. We saw Russell and Verstappen having a beautiful duel. The first time those two were duelled, that switchback move on Russell was just... Oh no, it wasn't even a switchback. He just held it around the outside, caught Max out. Leclerc with his engine problem. Then we saw the team orders bit. It did die down, but then obviously the Hamilton-Sainz recovery in the battle, and then obviously we saw the Mercedes duo having water pressure issues, led to that. But there it is, guys. That is my personal F1 2022 tier list of the races throughout the course of the season. Let me know what you think, though. Do you agree with this? Do you disagree with this? And maybe make your list in the comment section down below, and we'll see what you guys are thinking. If you haven't enjoyed the video, though, drop a like, subscribe if you're new around here as well. I'll catch you guys next time. Take care, all. Peace.